Hi there, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, we're here to talk about that mini series we've been running now for 6 weeks. This will be the sixth week mini series that we're doing called A Near Perfect Start. This will be the sixth episode, and I've done them kind of the way I like them the best. So the first episode was my least favorite, and this will be my most favorite of these three album runs. So I want to get to them right away. So we've got the band we're doing tonight is Black Sabbath. First three albums: Masters of Reality, Paranoid, and debut album by Black Sabbath. To me, this was kind of a no-brainer because I knew I liked all these albums. I'd had them for years. This one is probably the least of them. It's a one, but it's going to probably be nominated for a masterpiece next year anyways. But anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about them. And at the end, I'll give you some of the other bands that didn't quite make the list for whatever reason, and we'll get into it. Though actually, before I started, I should explain too. So, I was charged with Ben to pick my six favorite three album runs from the beginning of their debut for their first three studio albums, to pick them. So, this is the sixth band, which is Black Sabbath. The other bands, for whatever reason, some of them didn't make it because there was an album in that three album run that I hadn't listened to enough to warrant anything, or I hadn't listened to it at all. There was one album in the group and I wasn't as fond of them as I originally had hoped I would be. And then there's just a couple of bands that I haven't gotten into far enough to really give that a full view. So these three albums we're going to talk about now. Black Sabbath's debut. So this album I had in vinyl originally years ago when I collected vinyls. I don't have any of them anymore. I gave them all to my sister. But I know I bought this again in CD form, but it seems to have disappeared. I didn't find it. And so for what really kind of happened to this album is that because I didn't have it anymore, I wasn't listening to it. It didn't quite get to that level that the other two got to as a result of my being able to listen to them. So this was debuted in 1970. One of the best Black Sabbath covers. Very kind of creepy, very kind of eerie feeling. Halloweenish, I guess maybe you might want to call it. Some great stuff on here. So it opens up with that track Black Sabbath, which is the debut album's title. Very kind of doomy and gloomy and heavy in nature. Not something that was too common at that period of time either. Then you got The Wizard, which is a little bit more up-tempo, a little bit faster paced, but really catchy track. Then you get The Wasp, which is a kind of a three-parter. Behind the Wall of Sleep, basically, and NIB. So basically these the kind of a bass part that ties the two front suites together, the front suite and the back suite together. NIB, really good, catchy track, really. Then you got Wicked World, which is a little bit more kind of eerie, but scrapey almost at times as well. And then A Bit of Finger, Sleeping Village, and Warning. All pretty much cementing this as a kind of a doomy, heavy doomy, overwrought with kind of a Halloween flavor to it. Yeah, so really, really good album. Solid in every respect of how as a debut album, it's one of the best. Next album up. So initially not so good. This is a kind of weird cover. It's like a cheap cover. It's almost like they just took somebody and dressed them in some stupid costume and then kind of videotaped them doing this and then spaced it out so it's kind of supposed to be kind of a spacey feel, but just feels it's not really the best of cover. It's the guy is wearing like a bike helmet or something. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyways, that's where it ends as far as the crappy part goes. So the rest of the album is fantastic. This is a very kind of heavy album, very psychedelic compared to the first album, which is more doomy. This one's much more psychedelic in nature, but you do have your doom and gloom feel going on here with like War Pigs. It starts out as a very kind of doom and gloom, almost a proggy type song as well. It's got that real proggy feel to it, but it's a song that almost anybody who's listened to any kind of metal will know it. It's actually called War Pigs and Luke's Wall, but we all just effectively call it War Pigs. It's a bit longer too. I actually thought it was much longer. I thought it was like 13 or 14 minutes, but it's actually only about 8 minutes long. But for a metal band, that's a long time. I wouldn't have thought of when I think of this album. I don't really think of it as metal. I think it more of it as psychedelic, doomy, gloomy, war-like album. Very, very much anti-war. Paranoid is the next track on here. Really good track. Probably the most well-known of the songs on the album. Arguably, it was on the radio a lot. I personally don't ever want to hear it again. It's overkilled, but it makes its point. Really catchy, lots of hooks on this particular song. Then you got Planet Caravan, which is really psychedelic, really kind of that psychedelic flair to it. A lot of people never liked this song initially. I never liked it initially either, but I got over that. It's now become one of the songs I like quite a bit on this album. And then it ends off side one with Iron Man, which is absolutely one of the heaviest songs out there. One of the most recognizable for those people who like the Iron Man, the movies. This will be the most recognizable song to you. Heavy. Ozzy's voices, they feed it through a computer, sounds fantastic. But again, another song, maybe a little bit too much playtime. You got the backside of the album, Electric Funeral, really psychedelic, really kind of different. It's not really like any other song I've ever heard, at least in the metal realm. It's got that real kind of psychedelic but heavy, grindy kind of metalish sound to it. Hand of Doom, real catchy, up tempo, but at the same time, very kind of doomy as well. Hand of Doom. Rat Salad's one track on the album I don't really care for. It's a drum bit done by Bill Ward. Well done, but I never was a big fan of drum bits. This one is no exception to that. Sorry. And then you got Jack the Stripper or Fairies Wear Boots, another kind of catchy hook, real catchy riff on this particular track. So, yeah, fantastic album. Definitely a masterpiece for me, album cover aside. And the last of the three, not the least, maybe the best of the three, in my opinion, I think it's the best of the three, Master of Reality. This is a heavy album, much heavier than the first two. Very almost dark and menacing and doomy. And it has a little bit of that stoner feel to it as well. There's actually a little bit of speed metalish kind of stuff going on here too. So you get some proto speed metal, some proto, what do they call it? Doom. You've got some proto stoner rock going on here. Yeah, so this album has a lot of different elements going on here. Sweet Leaf, really heavy, very beefy guitar sound here. The hack that goes on, I could probably imitate very well today. So yeah, the opening track, very strong. Then you got After Forever, which is more of a speed metal like song. Very different from anything else on the album, I think. It it bangs and crunches its way along, really catchy. I love the lyrics on this. It was initially probably my favorite track on the album. Embryo, just a little bit, that opens up Children of the Grave, which is another great heavy metal song. This is a very doomy song. The title of the song, Children of the Grave, enhances that quite a bit. Then you got Orchard, which is another kind of acoustic bit, followed by Lord of This World, which is a track on. It's probably for me the weakest track on the album. Um, Not that it's weak; it's a strong song. I just never really, it never really became like a major hit for me. But I still like it. It's a good song. One of the longer songs on the track too. Then you got Solitude, which is arguably my favorite track now on the album. I've long liked this. I love the heavy bass. I love the kind of doomy feel to it. I love the sadness to the song, the heaviness to the song. Really great. And then it ends off with Into the Void, another real heavy, smashing track as well. And all three of these, I believe, were produced by Roger Bain. Roger Bain did all three. Really great. And they're all so different too. So you got this real doomy album first. Then you've got this kind of psychedelic kind of mess of all kinds of stuff here. And then you got more of that mess of stuff here, but heavier, much heavier album. So there you go. Those are the three albums we did for the final episode of A Near Perfect Start. And this is episode 6 featuring Black Sabbath, their debut. Paranoid, their second album. And then their third album, Master of Reality. All fantastic, great albums. So some of the other albums I just wanted to mention that I decided against. So one of them was the first three BTO albums, BTO 1, BTO 2, and Not Fragile. So Not Fragile is fantastic. Absolutely killer. The other two albums are good, but have weak points to them too. That probably hurt them a little bit. They weren't quite good enough to knock out Rush or Led Zeppelin out of those first two spots. Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, Diary of Madman, and Bark at the Moon. So the first two albums are absolutely killer, but neither one of them has made masterpiece yet. At least I don't think either of them. I don't think either of them have made masterpiece for me, but they're both close. The Bark of the Moon album is okay. It's a good album, but it doesn't have Randy Rhoads, and so it takes a bit of a dive there. And the other one that I wanted to mention as a honorable mention was the Phil Collins' first three, Face Value, Hello, I Must Be Going, and No Jacket Required. Face Value, of course, has the In the Air Tonight track, which brings it up a lot. There's a couple of other tracks on there I think pretty good, but the album overall is a little bit too average for me. The next album out I liked much better. It has overall much better songs on it. Stuff that has long stood the test of time for me is probably my favorite Phil Collins album, but still not a masterpiece. And then the last one, No Jacket Required, probably the most well-known album by Phil Collins. Lots of great stuff on there too, but a lot poppier. Well, maybe a little more poppier than the second one, and a lot more poppier than Face Value. So those were the three kind of honorable mentions. There were a few other bands that I thought, had some staying power for that too. The Gabriel first three, Blue Oyster Cult's first three, Kiss's first three, but none of those really measured up. The one band that kind of hurt the most was probably Steely Dan, because I haven't listened to Countdown to Ecstasy enough to really kind of give it a rating, and that's probably the reason why I didn't make it. So that's it for the series. I hope you've enjoyed this series. It was fun to do. It was a good topic by Ben. I appreciated it. It really made me think about some of the stuff I like, and I'm very happy with my Black Sabbath finishing at the top of the heap here. So anyways, we will probably be doing another mini-series, Probably might take a week off and then start again the following Tuesday. I like to take a week or so off to kind of absorb what's coming up. And so I hope you've enjoyed this, and we will see you again next week with some more new stuff. And take care and have yourself a good one. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Make your comments in the comment section, and have a good night. Goodbye.